yellow line on Cortez is kind of disappearing all over there. I got an email yesterday that one of the seniors is going to start a petition.
To get them repainted.
Yeah, it's dangerous for seniors.
Oh, thank you.
Well, there was an international road.
Yes, I can remember my own name this morning.
So, yeah, I know that because
10 o'clock, everybody. We have a quorum. We'll call the Electoral Area Service Committee meeting of December 11th, 2024 to order. The first item of business is that the chair acknowledges we're located on the traditional territory of the Last Attached people, and we need an adoption of the public agenda motion.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Nothing to add by anyone? Call the question. All those in favor? And that is carried. Anything in adoption of previous minutes? Motion, please.
Move adoption of the previous minutes.
Second.
Nothing to say here. All those in favor? It's carried. Business arising, anything? Seeing nothing? No public consideration, notice of motions. Chair doesn't have a report this morning. Staff reports, number 1, financial plan for 2025 for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Do you have something for us this morning, Mike?
Yeah. So just kind of following, Mr. Chair, with the order of presentations. So at this, tomorrow, of course, we got the one-on-ones. So if you see anything in here specific to tomorrow or you've seen in the plan, save it for tomorrow if it's specific to this. So this is just technically speaking shared services for the EA. So because I anticipate or you've likely seen some things that we've put in them, but this is just mostly for discussion purposes for tomorrow, because with regional district planning is up until year end, it's just planning and projecting. No, you get no hard numbers. Yeah. Just to, again, apologize if you already know this, but the one-on-one difference with municipalities and regional districts is, let's say you take Canberra River and they're, I'm going to make this up, projecting a $10 million surplus in their budget. So they can say, let's peg at $10 million and let's do our budget and come up with a number. And let's say they come up with 3.5. So that's prior to the year end. So then they do the year end and find that it's a little off. They just adjust the surplus accordingly. Maybe it's 8.2 or 11.1. Regional districts have to balance every single function, and some of them are pretty thin, so we can't project a surplus and then go, okay, we're going to hold it at that. So what we do is try and plan and project as much as we can to year end is what we're doing. And then once the January 1st kind of happens, Mike and his team consolidate the new assessments, the housing numbers, and get year-end numbers in, and then give you something that's solid for. So again, this is just for planning purposes. So anything you saw in here that you said, oh, I didn't know that, or I didn't say this, it's just to kind of fill some gaps for discussions, mostly for tomorrow.
Okay, so that was most of my speech, but yeah, as
I did not intend that, so I apologize.
But yeah, as Dave said, this is just a draft. When I started here in 2019, we actually used to just bring the copy of the existing budget, and then we'd have business cases and everything else to discuss. So we found this is a more helpful method. So we took last year's budget, we took all the amendments, the estimated surplus, the contractual obligations, and some inflationary adjustments, carry forward assumptions, and we kind of boil that into a preliminary budget. It's also has all some capital renewals, some assumption on the funding methods, and everything else. The goal of this meeting is really just to gather everyone's feedback, and we want to bring you a draft budget in January that might be more better aligned to what you want to see. So that's really our goal here is today. My presentation should be pretty brief, and we'll leave time at the end of the more or less to have the discussion. The other thing I want to point out is that everything you see here today and tomorrow, we're going to be talking about tax rates and cost per homes and everything else. All that is based on the 2024 assessment values. So we know they're not going to be applicable for 2025 and all that. Anything as far as the tax rate is subject to change. The one big benefit to using it is it gives you a true interpretation of any of the impacts of the spending change, because it doesn't mix in any assessment shifts or non-market change, so you'll get a true idea of what the changes are for 2025. And the last thing I'll bring up is there is a March 31st deadline for passing a budget bylaw, so that's kind of what we'll be shooting for. Last year we passed it in February, but we only have a limited number of meetings, so hopefully this will be an efficient process. So the first slide here is just on CPI, which we always talked about this during the surplus presentation as one of the myths. If you look at our 2024 budget, it's actually about 3% of our budget's actually tied to CPI or our overall budget, but that includes some pretty big capital projects. But the only thing that's really tied to CPI, or what it really drives, is on the salary side. So that's about 10% of our operating budget. A lot of our expenses, as far as contractor insurance, enterprise software, chemical, steel, all that, we tend to see it's quite a higher rate than CPI. But going into 2025, we look like we're going to end the year about 2.5%. Inflation's kind of seems to be bottoming out in that area, but it's coming off some relatively high levels. So, and again, we've tried to bake in a couple of these assumptions into the 2025 numbers that you see. So hopefully it'll be pretty accurate. So as we said, today's meeting is just to talk about the shared services, which there are 4. So we're just going to have a high-level look at the overall changes. So the first shared service is liquid waste, but that's just shared with 2 area, EAs, B and D. Not much change there to talk about. For 500 planning, the impact there is mostly coming from surplus and staffing beginning to normalize. For Vancouver Island Library, we had a significant increase last year and another one this year. So it's about 12% overall. So they changed up the funding in the capital has been quite a bit changed, but I say it's 12% for operating and 7% capital is what they're anticipating for our area. And as far as the electoral area administration, just know we get quite a few of the expenses submitted in January. So hopefully we'll be looking to trim the estimates and whatnot. So this might be subject to change. Other than that, it's a pretty standard year. We tweaked around some of the legal and training contingencies, and the reserve transfers came down a little bit, but nothing too exciting there. So those 4 services lead to a change in households. Again, it's based off the 2024 assessment, but the numbers on the screen are about the impact that the shared services would be to each of your areas based on the 2024 assessments. The other big component of the shared services is the gas tax. So we have some schedules for you. This is all from page 47 of your books. I kind of shrunk it down a bit. We did add interest in there this year. Everything going forward is just an estimate. The 2025 interest estimate you see there, it's subject to change. It's going to be based on your actual spend. Primarily, I was just computing the interest in 2024 to come up with a more accurate opening balance. So that's where all the work in the interest estimate lies. And again, these projects are just kind of queued in there. They're all subject to change. I will be looking to change these schedules for the future. The spending commitments could be in future years, which is kind of hard to see on this table. So I'll look to fix that. The other big change is we have that 2029 plus long-term asset management commitments. Again, with the new Community Works Funds agreement, they want to see everything committed in the schedule. So this is my way of showing it. But if you want your uncommitted balance for Area A, you look at the 337,000 there.
Can I just ask you, Mike, does that include this year's contributions?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
So while Mike's pausing, just a comment here, when you see this stuff, we have taken the liberty just for discussion purposes of populating some of these things that you wouldn't have seen in your previous budgets or committed to it. So they're just kind of a placeholder. If you look at an item and it says, oh, X amount of dollars in gas tax, it's just basically a placeholder for discussion purposes tomorrow.
If we allocate something to a project, can we later on change our mind and reallocate it somewhere else? Perfect.
Yeah.
Can I interrupt? Sorry, so just to confirm, we're not discussing the gas tax allocations here at this shared services meeting? We're talking about
No.
them tomorrow?
Yeah, tomorrow.
Okay.
Because again, you'll see, in Area Cs, we definitely have populated some items with a gas tax contribution, but, and that you might go, oh, geez, I never knew that, or we didn't talk about that. It's just a placeholder that we can say, okay, this is needed. Does the project go ahead? Should it be funded by somewhere else? Here's, or it should be funded through gas tax. It's just, again, a placeholder for discussion purposes.
Yeah, and as part of my sequence too, is anytime the gas tax is the one area where the funds are actually located in a regional function, and then the spending comes from the shared services. But it's kind of my process is anytime there's a project to fund, I always look for the most restrictive source of funding to spend that first, and then to leave the freer funds, so to speak, on our books. So again, this is all from page 47. I just kind of clipped them down a bit so they showed a bit easier for the presentation. And as far as area, not too much to discuss, but these are the projects we have for Area B. Again, they're free to change. For Area C, this is currently shown as being overcommitted, but again, we could stretch some of these projects out, put them into the 1 year. A lot of the spending is falling into 2025, so the funding can either be reallocated to different sources, or we could look to stretch these projects out.
If I may ask a quick question, just a flag for you that I will be asking tomorrow. I noticed that there was a $384,000 item on there for Port Neville Wharf upgrades, and I'm not familiar with that, so I'm going to want some information on that tomorrow.
Yeah, we understand and realize that. So again, part of the planning process for this is to bring forward things that, I'll give an easy example. In the past, every year it happens. Let's say we go to Q Cove Sewer and say, look, here's, we're deficient in some funding, here's a way to fund it, you can do this, that, and the other. So again, just putting projects in there as placeholders for discussion purposes. So there's likely many in here that, we'll talk about all of them, but there's no presumption that these are funded through however sources we got in there, but we're just populating the projects for discussion purposes.
Chair. Thank you. Just a comment to make. When I'm looking at this, I'm just reminded of the last board meeting where we were talking about gas tax money and comments being made about electoral directors spending ad hoc. What's ad hoc about this?
I'm the wrong person to ask that, so I didn't make that comment. What you can say is staff definitely, because we have to discuss ways of sourcing things, okay? So we haven't had the one on meeting, and so it's like, okay, an easy way for discussion purposes is to fill the gaps here for discussion. You can look at one and say, I don't want to contribute gas tax, I want to increase the requisition or whatever you want. We're just populating identified projects. You can cancel them if you want, but we're not saying, and we never said they're ad hoc, and so all you see here is, so I can't answer that, but I will take the ownership of staff have populated this, but just for discussion purposes. If you don't want to allocate gas tax to these, or you want to fund them otherwise, that's totally up to you. It's just, we need to plug a gap right now, because look at the alternative for us. Let's just say, for example, on these, we identified a wharf upgrade or a project on here that we didn't have funds for. We would go, okay, well, we'll apply requisition funds, and then you would see the projection for your budget in that service going way up. We obviously don't want to do that. So an easy way to populate things for discussion purposes that have no effect on requisition is to populate it with gas tax. So that's all these are.
And yeah, further that, and then kind of just highlight my past comment there. Anytime I'm dealing with standard infrastructure, sewer, water, parks, anything traditional that's applicable for gas tax, because gas tax is more restrictive than internal funds, I just use that first. As Dave says, if you go for Area D, for example, we got the big water projects and everything else, it's all gas tax applicable. If you want to fund that out of your water service, you're more than free. Just give me direction and we'll revise your budget. But I think that's the end of my presentation. If you want to move on to questions.
Anyone? Well, I have one question, while you guys are thinking. I was talking about this before, but for example, in the Sayward Valley, where we have 306 folios and 227 households, just the phrase that says cost per household is a little bit misleading, and I know averages don't mean anything anyway, but I wonder if it would be possible to change the wording to cost per folio.
In my humble opinion, I think that's more confusing. I'm just one guy here, but a folio is just a fancy word for a property. And a property has a house on it, 2 houses, 3 houses, no houses on it. And every house has a different value to it, whether it has a house or 2 or none on it. And so as we know in regional districts, it's why we've related tax increases in dollars per home, because percentages are kind of useless in regional districts because it depends on what services you get and your assessments. And then we've talked about the overall assessment shifts. So one thing that's been effective to us, and then you got to come up with an average home.
Yeah, I understand
I can promise you this at the end of the day, and it's not a deal breaker for me, but if we quoted in folios, I'll bet you a cup of coffee we get more questions on what a folio is than a home.
I've been putting a lot of time in director's reports explaining the difference, but how about cost per lot?
Well, to me, it's semantics because I'm knowing how the feedback we get from people, and look, collectively, we have hundreds of years of experience and we get feedback from people. The home is the simplest. I'm not saying anything's perfect, but people relate to the cost per home, and it's just the average home, right?
Yeah, I realize that, but you see, in a municipality where a lot and home's the same thing is good, but 1/3 of my households have more than one lot. 1/3, over a third.
One more, no, well, you'd have a separate folio then.
That's right. So if they did it, all those people like one.
But those are just separate properties, though. If you have more than one folio, it just means you have more than one property.
That's right, but it's all joined together on their piece of land.
Well, maybe.
It's their property, but it's separate lots,
Yeah.
technically.
Yeah.
So lots of people are paying, 2 or 3 times. If it was price per lot, they would have a better idea, average price per lot, they'd add those 3 together and say, well, that's the average. But that's only in rural areas like Area A, it's not everywhere else.
I personally think it will add more confusion. Again, there's no perfect answer to this because, again, all you can do, like I just read what did Camp River come up, and they said the average increase was $81 a home or whatever. Almost nobody's going to get $81, right? The average home, but it's the best you can do because you've got, forestry lands, you've got commercial lands.
In your report, if you make it per lot.
I mean, anything's possible, but I
need your consent.
Well, no, I mean, it's not a deal breaker for me.
We'll try it out for Area A, and if I get a bunch of people who don't understand, we'll change it.
Yeah, it's just, people will come from the city of Camp River to pay their taxes here, right? And then they're getting taxes from highways, as you know, and they'll complain to us, and then the taxes that come from somebody, they'll whether they're rural or in the municipality, they're coming from different sources, right? So there's already so many levers of confusion in the description. So, but
Tell them to ask their director. He did this.
Sure, yeah.
One quick point out too, the tax tables actually in everybody's book, every service has a little tax table. There it is quantified as folios, but Dave did mention, right, we're talking about residential folios, you have industrial folios, everything else. When I write the budget bylaw is one thing, but when I'm writing the budget booklet, I really try and simplify that for people just to make it approachable. And a lot of people don't like certain terms, right? So I've always tried to, even like CPI, I don't like, I'd rather talk about inflation and everything
I'm
else.
still stuck in the era of mill rates where everybody knew what a mill rate was.
Yeah, I took that out too, because everyone's like, we don't have a mill anymore, so why would we have mill rates? So it's, yeah, it gets complicated.
Thanks. Director Winnie.
Thank you, Chair. And Mike, I had a question, and I think this is a question for you, because this is the shared services section. Looking at the function 500, the planning page, it looks like the planned requisition is increasing from the 2024 budget to the 2025 budget by $95,000. But then I also noticed that there's a transfers from reserves and a transfer to reserves. And the transfer from reserves is $217,000 more than the transfer back to reserves. So does that sort of indicate that we're talking about like a $300,000 increase to the planning function in this year, rough numbers?
You could look at over the overall expenses, but yeah, the transfer going to reserves is going to include some interest and some standard transfers. The transfers from reserve would include any transfers. And so there, I think we got 75,000 of that's gas tax money. And then, yeah, we do some requisition smoothing, everything every year. So,
So
but
the
yeah, you should look
transfers
at.
from reserves, can you just explain to me maybe I don't really understand the transfers from reserves. I thought it was maybe transferring from the reserve into the function
That's
so that the
exact-
function could actually operate this year. But those are specifically for specific items, is that what you're saying?
So if I can interject
Yeah.
on one thing, we have an appropriated surplus in many services, and what that is to do a requisition smoothing, if you will. So we'll make a judgment again on what the requisition is required, what we have in reserves, and apply a certain amount to smooth the requisition out so that there's not leaps and bounds. People find that if it's a smoother transition. So let's say when we're trying to balance staffing, for example, that we're bringing our contingent up and you hire somebody in June, let's say after the budget's done, and then you only have to pay half their salary. And then next year it comes to the full salary. To try and smooth some of those transitions, we'll apply an appropriated surplus at times. And that's really what that appropriated surplus was populated with to do. So we'll take the liberty of applying a certain amount to smooth it. If you didn't want to smooth it, I mean, there's only so many things, let's say, in certain reserves that you can apply. Like one of the things we've done in, let's say, administration services like general government, there's not a whole lot of tangible physical things to hold a reserve for. So it's like this organization had built up a certain amount of reserve for general admin, and it's like we've tried throughout the years to put that back into the system to smooth out the requisitions, to level them off over time so they don't have big leaps and bounds. So part of that transfers from reserve is intentional through, as we get ourselves to a full contingent of operating costs, is to smooth that transition.
Thank you for that, Dave. And I guess I do have a follow-up question or comment about that. So it sounds like the transfer from reserves is to smooth out an increase in requisition. And when I look at the 2026 budget, I see that there's actually a $260,000 difference between 2025 and 2026. So is that because there's no smoothing added, or is that because there won't be any further smoothing? I'm just trying to understand, like, it's going from, in 2024, we had budgeted 662,000, and now we're going to a budget of 1.1 million in 2 years, so.
Well, again, in fairness, part of that budget is grants. There's a large contingent of grants, transfers from government grants in there. So if we got, let's say for round figures, we had a 500 planning budget of $1 million, and we received $1 million in grants, the budget would be $2 million the next year. And so you'd go, oh gosh, the budget's going up from 1 to 2 million. So some of that money is transfers from other areas like grants. So
Okay.
it's not like you have to look at certain things there. It's not, if the budget goes up, the budget's like, let's say, I don't know, whatever year we were awarded Connected Coast budget went up $50 million, right? Like, because we received grant money for it. So we've received funding for programs. Just because the net budget went up, it doesn't mean the requisition went up.
Okay, I was looking at the line called property tax requisition, though. I wasn't looking at the net budget. I was looking at the property tax requisition. That looks like it's going to be increasing by $260,000 from this year to next year. And so, just circling back to the talk about the government transfers and the grants. So for projects which are being undertaken by planning, then those grants are directly included in here. Like I see, is that correct? Like I see $241,000 in government transfers for this year. So that number is for projects that the planning has undertaken this year. Is that correct?
Yeah, it depends on the money we get. So the government transfer will be a specific transfer, probably from the provincial or federal government to do a project.
Okay,
there.
like in the active transportation network plan. for
Exactly right.
instance.
And
Okay.
then when those projects come in, you'll see a spike to expenses and a spike to the income. But then the requisition is normaled out. But if you look at any of our service any of our service for any of the years, if you look at the current year's numbers, they always include the surplus. So all of our
Yep.
functions have a big spike in the future years, just because we have to do a balanced budget, so we never predict a surplus or deficit, even though we always have, or we try to have one every year. So every service,
Okay.
you'll always see a spike in the future years.
Okay, I appreciate you explaining that to me. Thank you very much, Mike.
Yeah.
Anyone else in shared services? We're on receipt. Call the question then. All those in favor? Anyone opposed? That's carried. Number 2, Cam River Fire Protection Cost Review for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion? Staff got anything on this one? Fire protection?
Unless John wants to speak, Tom, to it?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not the author of the report. I think if I understand correctly, this was in response to a request for an analysis of the present contract. And I think that's what's being provided. I don't know if the director has any questions. Happy to try
Go
and
ahead,
answer any.
Director Race.
Again, I don't want to drag this meeting down, but some of the things that I've noticed is that I did sit in Campbell River's budget meetings this year, and I'm really confused now with the numbers. For example, Campbell River is showing a budget for the fire at $6,903,000, but we don't seem to reflect that here. Campbell River is showing things like, fire suppression at 4.8 million, but we don't seem to reflect that here. What I find really confusing with Campbell River's information is they talk about a master plan at $250,000, and the whole idea of that master plan is that it's going to inform overall strategic capital plans going forward, but we're already paying for capital expenses right now. I'm also wondering where the flex positions were paid. So according to Campbell River's numbers, there was a flex position in 2023 at $58,000, but I don't see that reflected in the financials too much. They also claim that there's another position in 2024, but I don't see that in the financials. So again, I'm trying to get some transparency on this because this is getting a little bit challenging to understand. So I will have more comments tomorrow. The other thing that that I thought was interesting was that you talk about what we pay the city, and then you say that some of that money goes into reserves, and yet where does the reserves actually show?
So I'll just answer part of it, then Mike can answer part of it. So part of it is timing, right? So when you say you don't see this, that, and the other, this is their current year's financial plan. So if you're looking at their financial planning for next year, we don't have that, so we're just responding. So what they do, and again, a city operates under a different set of rules than regional districts. So this is their budget, and we don't have any role in that. What they do is they present, at a high level, they present it to us and say, okay, this is our budget, here's the details of it, you pay whatever percent we pay on that. And then they go through the year, and then that number in the following year will be adjusted based on what they spent on it.
Yeah, I get that.
So we don't have that yet. And so this is when we'll chat with you tomorrow about it, but is that, like, again, when you're a contractor to it, somebody says, this is what it's gonna cost, we put it in the budget, and those reserves we're keeping, by the way, for ourselves, like, we're just putting that in our reserve to make a capital contribution, but we won't know their year-end numbers for, I don't know, a month or two, probably. So when that happens, we will have to consolidate our payment to them, whether it's higher or lower. They'll send us, an invoice or credit and say, okay, we consolidated, this was the actual number. So if you're looking for actuals, other than what we provide you, we won't have them ourselves.
Right.
And if they're projecting something into next year, again, what they end up spending, I won't know that until, February 2026.
Yep.
So, again, happy to chat with you more, but we've just given you, we don't have any more information than you have. So we take what their budget is, and we've tried to answer your questions, but we don't have year-end numbers yet.
Yeah.
So
well,
maybe they projected those, I don't know, this flex position. Maybe they hired it, maybe they didn't. I have no idea.
Okay. Well, again, it's just confusing when I take a look, because Campbell River, according to their documents right now, if I looked at fire suppression, which is a line item in the budgets, Campbell River is claiming that $4,852,453 is going to go to fire suppression. Yet when I take a look at the budget numbers that you've shown here, we're not anywhere close to that. There's a discrepancy. What your numbers are showing is only $4,616,657. So again,
Don't
Sorry,
make
I
the
could-
semantics, but they're not my numbers. These are Campbell Rivers Fire in a budget, and then, so you got a budget, and then you get a year end,
Right.
and you consolidate it. I don't know what they do over there, like what they're spending, or maybe they're deferring things, or maybe they didn't get to it. Until we get year end, all we have is what they've provided. So if they
Right.
don't consolidate it, yeah, we'll have that before our budget is finalized prior to March.
Okay.
And we'll have year ends. And then maybe you'll be able to dissect it a little bit better then, because you'll see what they actually spent compared to what they budgeted.
okay.
I got a
Well,
quick
again,
note.
I just want to point out that, there was, everybody knows the article that went out in the Mirror, a couple of days ago, where the fire hall's in a deficit of, 357,000, and yet, and they're claimed that they've been in a deficit for a decade. So, and yet the financials don't seem to show that.
Yeah, again, munis operate a little bit differently. They have this one big pot of money, and they can share it within, water, sewer, planning, whatever they do there. So how they would show a deficit or surplus in different areas, I don't know. Because net, at the end of the day, their budget is going to be balanced. Within it, and I don't claim to understand how they're doing it, but within it, they may have identified deficits and surpluses through their own internal process. I have no idea.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry to jump in. All the documents you're looking at here are 10 to 11 months old. So the stuff you're talking about, Campbell River just passed that a couple days ago. So now that it's approved, they're going to send us a 2025 budget. So if that's done between now and when we actually pass our budget, I will do those updates. We're not scheduled to actually get those current numbers. We'll probably get them by Friday. I don't know if they're going to come tomorrow, but usually they pass their budget, and then within probably 5 to 10 working days, then we get the budget's over here. We pay off a budget, and then there is a reconciliation to actual. May is usually the time when everyone files their year end, so we'll probably get their final numbers, about March. But And then just to your comment to reserves, anytime we have a major contract like this, and perhaps I'll even bring up community halls, for example. We have several community halls in areas B and C. Most of the expense is with them, but the service is ours. So we take a reserve requisition on top of that, which includes a reserve transfer, includes some insurance, some little bit of support service charges and everything else. So for all the fires, and there is that small layer of stuff, but for community halls, for example, like say we own some of the equipment, even Cortez Fire, we own some of the fires, so there's a reserve transfer on top of what we get for the city to handle our numbers, so that's where it sits. So if you look at the chart in your budget for fire, you'll see us accumulating reserves eventually, so we can afford the big fire thing coming out later. But everything stays within their budget, and there is just a time lag of anywhere from a couple months to or a year over year, where a reconciliation process takes place.
Okay. The other thing that I was just going to comment, and I'm sure it'll be answered tomorrow, is when I take a look at the capital expenses, and then I take a look at what Campbell River is showing for capital expenses, the two are quite a bit different. And it makes it very confusing, especially if we're trying to be transparent on this. And what I find even more confusing is that, the numbers in blue are just basically placeholders where there's been no budget actually committed to it. So what are the actual numbers?
Yeah, they've always used placeholders, but again, you're looking at information you've gained a couple days ago to what they have estimated months ago. So when we get their new estimates in, those estimates should reflect their most current budget meeting. So this is they probably made these estimates maybe 13 months ago, and then their capital shift, anything else, and then they do have the couple blue highlights, and then it's just the way it's always worked. But again, that's where the confusion lies, is just the timing difference. Once we get the new budgets, those budgets will probably compare to the notes you've taken over the past couple of days, because it'll all be from the same information. And that's true with our budgets. If you pull out our 2022 budget and you look at what the 2025 numbers will be, there'll be a difference. There's been a lot that's happened between 2022 and 2025. We've had new direction. We've shifted some capitals.
Yeah, but that's actually not what's happening. Their numbers that are in blue, what we show here in blue, is pretty close to what they're showing in blue. And what I'm saying is that if you haven't even committed, any budget towards it, how do we know that those numbers are even accurate? And yet, that's what you're doing right now with Area D, is that we're already collecting on capital assets without actually knowing what is the true cost of them.
We do that all budgets are like that. We have no idea what the wharf will actually cost, but we put a budget estimate in there. It should cost about $900,000, or for example, it might be $950, it might be $850. All budgets are accumulation of future estimates. So we do the best they can, and we don't know the actual cost, what that fire hall will be. If I even look at that fire hall, that's an estimate probably from 2021, 2022. It's in a 2025 budget.
Again, I'll ask more questions tomorrow. I don't want to drag down this meeting. Thank you.
I've just got one quick little question, sympathizing with Area D and a contract with Campbell River. When Area A had a contract with the village of Sayward for fire, we would say give them 90,000. They'd put it in general revenue and spend it on their waterworks wherever they felt like. So does Area D have any control over that kind of manipulation?
Well, I can't speak to whether Sayward was doing that or Campbell River. We pay for a fire service in there, and we pay a percentage of the overall costs. They have to consolidate what those are, and we pay that bill.
Gotcha. All right, on receipt. All those in favor? And that is carried. Number 3, Fire Smart Pilot Program for Regional District Community Wildfire Response Organizations for receipt.
Move receipt.
Do we get a seconder?
Second.
Thank you.
Sean will speak to this.
Go ahead, Sean.
Thank you, directors. This is an awareness piece. We understand that community concern of wildfires are high, and that there are a number of very well-intentioned and grassroots organized community wildfire brigades throughout the SRD, primarily the ones in Electoral Area C. But wanted to let the directors, especially Robin, know if they come to you asking the SRD to apply for this grant and they have ideas, we have no authority to do so because we have they have no affiliation with us. There's no service establishing bylaw that authorizes us to apply for this grant. So just getting ahead of public messaging on this prior to wildfire season. And any questions?
So I just got a quick question for you. For example, in Area A, where most of our land base is TFL, and that's a ministry responsibility if the gates aren't locked to suppress wildfire, does this kind of give the province the opportunity to download a little bit of cost on us or not?
I would have to follow that one up with a further report. That's a big unpacking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was just going to add, Mr. Chairman, I think the intent of the program, whether it's correctly interpreted or not, is to provide support for community-based wildfire brigades. These are people who want to train specifically to be, I guess, a localized attack group. And the province is rolling out this program, I think, as an incentive for these groups to actually think about themselves more as a formal arrangement rather than an informal group of people. So there could be more to it, but we don't know at this point.
Anything further? Director Finish.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I know in Cortez we have a wildfire brigade where they brought it, kind of looking for people to volunteer, and they get this sort of basic level training that can be done pretty quickly, and they don't have to show up every week for the training, but they can do things like dig ditches and stuff in case of a big wildfire. So you're saying that, can you just explain the connection between us having that brigade and our inability to apply for this funding?
Absolutely. So that brigade exists within a formalized fire protection area, a structure fire protection area. This is meant to serve areas that are not within a structure protection area. So areas like South Sonora Island, Reed Island, North Quadra, that do not have a fire hall, that do not have a fire truck.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
So Cortez would be ineligible.
Yep. Okay. Thanks.
Director Mooney.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you to Sean for the report. My questions, I do have a couple of them. One of them is on Quadra. I have heard that there may be that the fire department, which services the South Quadra Island Fire Protection District, has been looking at creating a wildfire brigade. That would be, and they're working with residents that live outside the fire protection district. So in that case, would they be eligible to apply or get the funding if it's for a wildfire brigade, which is outside of the district, but they are within the fire protection district?
Through the way that this grant is set up, no, because the Quad Island Fire Department's governed by an improvement district and not the regional district. So we do not have a service establishing bylaw for any type of fire protection on Quadra Island.
Okay, and so the funding is only for regional districts? Because the
funding is-
report sort of made it sound like it has to be, there needs to be an incorporated business entity such as a nonprofit society or fire brigade. So could we not incorporate, what does that mean exactly?
So all true. The entity on which the regional district would apply on behalf of has to be incorporated, formalized as a society. But that society cannot apply themselves. The province expects the regional district to still apply on their behalf. We are the only direct legal applicant for this grant.
So in the case of the Surge Narrows Community Association, they are a nonprofit society, so could they talk to you and you could apply on their behalf?
No, because we have no service establishing bylaw for wildfire brigade operations in Surge Narrows.
Okay, well, it feels like there's a bit of a gap, because if there was a service establishing bylaw, I'm not saying it's a gap on our point, I'm thinking it's a gap at the provincial level, because if there's a service establishing bylaw, then there would probably already be a wildfire or some sort of fire service.
Well, not necessarily. We could have a service establishing bylaw for just a wildfire brigade level of service, and the province would not recognize that as a structure fire protection area. So recall back the feasibility study with, Surge Narrows and Reed Island with the Community Wildfire Brigade. Morel, Reed told us, stop engagement. We're not interested in the regional district at all. South Sonora is still on the fence. Had any of those areas said, yes, we are interested in being a regional district wildfire brigade, and we went to referendum, petition, AEP, that all got approved, and we had a service establishing bylaw for them, then we could apply for this grant.
Okay, wow. Okay, well, thank you for clarifying that we're not able to apply for any money for the wildfire brigades we have.
This is why I wanted to get this on the agenda now, so when you eventually receive calls and emails from your constituents about it, you're not caught off guard.
Anything else? Director Benesh?
Because some of Cortez doesn't have a wildfire, isn't part of the wildfire protection zone, is it possible to apply for that aspect of it? Because we already have a fire service?
No. If the portion of, say, Tiber Bay that was not in the structure fire protection area, if we established a service establishing bylaw just for a wildfire brigade service for that area, then they could apply.
Thank you.
On your seat, all those in favor?
If the province wanted to make a document that clearly articulated that they do not understand how regional districts work, this is it.
That's carried. Number 4, Cortez Solid Waste Recycle BC Initiative Reduction for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you.
Oh, there she is. I couldn't see you.
Hello, thank you, through to the chair. So this report pretty much concludes the efforts that we undertook beginning in 2023 when the Recycle BC notified us that our collection volumes fell below our contractual obligations, and we began trying to increase those collection volumes, but subsequently had our incentives decrease significantly. So when we presented the letter where they informed us that we were not successful, they also mentioned that they were going to be doing a comprehensive review of their rate structure for these incentives. That process has concluded with Recycle BC, and they now have what the final offer will be, an updated statements of works and master services agreement that we are able to enter into starting in 2025 if it is the will of the committee and the board. So the updated incentives are captured in the table in the staff report. Just a quick correction. I note that we have resident education top-up listed twice. The $375 is technically an administration fee, but we're able to sort of use those funds however we want. So this is what they're offering. There's no opportunity or recourse to sort of engage with them to try to get more incentives. So now the per home incentive, annual incentive, is $18.95. As I mentioned, our contract with them expires in 2020 at the end of this year. So if we want to continue receiving this incentive, we need to sign the statement of work and master services agreement. Tomorrow, there will be conversations about how this could impact the user fee. I think it's probably best to leave that for tomorrow's discussion, but it is something we'll be interested in having some feedback on if we want to continue with this program. So happy to answer any other questions if there are any.
Anyone? Seeing none, on receipt. All those in favor? That's carried. A motion, Director Benesh.
I'll move that the committee recommend executing the updated statement of work and master services agreement with Recycle BC for multi-stream curbside recycling on Cortez Island.
Second.
Thank you, Director Benesh. Discussion? All those in favor? It's carried. Number 5, electoral area wood chipping costs for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you.
John can speak to this as well.
Yeah, so it was the will of the committee that a report be brought back that outlines the average and annual and past cost of the wood chipping service when offered on Cortez Island and Quadra Island, and those are the costs in the report.
Directors? Director Benesh?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for staff for this report. Do we have a number on what the mill rate would turn out to be based on these averages?
No, I don't have that handy.
Okay. Just as we set the rate for this new service, I guess we need to get those calculations so we.
Yeah, we could try and get some for you tomorrow, for sure.
Okay.
Are we talking about, Mike, the 25,000 across the Cortez?
Yeah.
Okay, we could come up with something
I think for
fairly
both,
close.
because
Yeah,
what we're
we'll do
looking to
that.
do is have the wood chipping service as part of this climate resiliency service.
Yes.
So having that mill rate
Yeah, we can do
estimate
that.
for those costs would allow us to sort of figure out what we want to set the mill rate up for the service for other projects.
Yeah, we can do that.
Any further?
Yeah, just one other question on just the granting, where we're at with grants for the wood chipping. Are there any updates there on when Quadra and Cortez would expect that to come back and be covered by the grant? Any news on that side?
The last board resolution passed for the 2025 Community Resiliency Investment Grant committed us to structural protection units, rebates, and Fire Smart crew members for 2025 and 2026. So the earliest we could apply for wood chipping again would be early 2027.
I do recall at EBCM, I don't know if you were at that meeting. Again, it was pre-election, but they said, I believe they said there was a limited amount of money. There was no intention to end the program, but again, they couldn't guarantee long-term. So, that's kind of fence-sitting commitments there because of the time of the year in the election. But I don't believe it's their intention to collapse it. And again, just because, let's say you create, make it part of the service, doesn't mean you got to requisition the money. It's just there. So it would be, in my mind, used as a tool is that you wanted the wood chipping and the grant wasn't there or wasn't as much as we wanted. We could have the resources to accentuate that.
Great, thank you.
Do you have something? No, go ahead if you got.
No, I guess, I just want to also point out, I think the other bonus for bringing this into the service was the fact that we could keep the chips on island and use it for projects, yeah.
Exactly. I wanted to reiterate that if we use the grant to subsidize even of a portion of the service, that the area that receives the service under the grant has to abide by those very stringent wood chip disposal rules. Whereas if it's our own service, we can do whatever we want with the wood chips and make sure that they serve the community to the best use.
Thank you. And just one last question for Mr. Yates. As far as setting up, this is a sub-regional service between Quadra, Discovery Islands, and Cortez. As far as the percentage breakdowns, how are you thinking we would do that? And would these numbers, based on what the wood chipping costs, be a factor in creating that?
Well, normally the costs of a shared service are shared between the participants on the basis of property assessments. It doesn't necessarily have to be that, but there has to be some objective data upon which the cost sharing would be shared between the two areas, regardless of where the actual work is happening or where other revenues might be coming in. So I'm not sure if that's where you're going with the question, but there is some choice.
We just set up the Sayward Fire Service, and it's a 60-40.
Right.
So it doesn't have to be assessments. Assessments has been the typical choice that's been used, but it doesn't have to be that.
So this would be something that Director Mawhinney and I would set based on looking at these numbers, based on other projects that we might want to do within the service.
This would be a bylaw that the whole board would vote on.
Yeah.
So, but Director Mawhinney and yourself could make a recommendation through this committee if you wish that it be shared a certain way that is non-conventional. But again, it would have to be something objective that could be data provided by a third party as opposed to us.
Great, thank you.
Just one comment I'll make there is when you set up a bylaw like that, say by percent, you change your mind, it's a owner's undertaking to try to amend the bylaw every couple of years. Better to get something that works forever. Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for this report. I was curious if during the UBCM-funded Fire Smart program, if chipping service was provided to Reed Island or any of the other Discovery Islands. I recall maybe there was chipping happening, but I wasn't sure if it was under this program. And then If they were, are the costs of the Outer Islands provision included in the totals in the table on page 1?
To the director, Reed Island offered chipping once under this program. Differently, it wasn't a drive-by service. Residents were instructed to bring their debris to the school where there was a chipper centralized on site, and then the chips were used to remulch the playground. And that cost is not included in there because our understanding was the intention of this wood debris service was for road accessible driveways and just for Quadra and Cortez.
How about buying your local association a chipper and let them do it themselves?
Yeah, okay. So, well, that raises an interesting point, because then does that mean that the service that we're contemplating, I mean, if it's a climate resiliency service, then it has repercussions for all of Area C, but if wood chipping is one of the major components and it's being recommended that it's only for Quadra Island, that road accessible driveways, that but I just have to think more about how that could work.
I'm not certain that's what Sean meant. I think within your own service, you're going to be granted more liberties of whatever you want to do. So if you have, it's defined within the service established by law. So if it's something that, let's say you wanted to make available to homes that don't have driveway access, you can certainly do that. So that doesn't, if you create a service, you create your own limitations or liberties within that. So let's say you have a climate resiliency service shared with areas B and C, and within that, you wanted to provide funding for wood chipping for areas that didn't have road access. You can certainly do that.
And sorry, and just to tag on to Dave with that, we're only able to provide you with we have immediate cost estimates of what we've done in the past with the service to offer centralized wood chipping on the Outer Discovery Islands. Right now, we do not know what that cost would be because we haven't done it before, and the Outer Discovery Islands is more logistically challenging.
Yeah, I think it was, for me, I was just really thinking about passing the requisition on to residents of all of Area C where the benefit may not be accruing equally. So that's something that
That's likely. I agree. That does happen throughout many services. Define equal, value, and so that's a discretionary call that during the establishment of the service, if that's something you want to include, just keep that in your back of your mind.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm going to have to give that some more thought, but I appreciate the context with Reed. And that those numbers are not included in that.
And I can say the 1 day on Reed for a centralized wood chipper, between the cost of it, the wood chipper being boated over $4,000 to $5,000.
$4,000 to $5,000.
$4,000 to $5,000, about $4,000 a day for labor, transport, etc.
These little areas might be a good opportunity for a private entrepreneur to, for a fee, go to driveway that's interested and set up a little business.
Okay.
We're done?
I have one more question,
Okay,
if I
go
may,
ahead.
Chair. I just noticed that on that table in the report, there's some pretty significant fluctuation in costs between years, both on Quadra and on Cortez. And I'm wondering if you have any insight into the potential underlying reasons for that.
Oh, how long do we have a while?
You should turn your mic on first.
Sure. I guess I got to start with the history on that. So 2020 was the first time wood chipping was offered, and it was just offered on Quadra and Cortez. And how that came into play was during COVID around the spring, before most, the communities are used to the open burning bans coming into place slightly after May long weekend. And the province pulled that a month early due to the smoke effects of COVID. So the regional district was receiving a lot of concerns from residents of the islands. We've got our burn piles ready to go in April, as is tradition, but we're not allowed to burn now. This is a fire hazard. So we checked the grants in our funds at the time. Quadra and Cortez had a bit left over, so we did the wood chipping service with really only a month's notice to the community. So that's why I think it was really low in the first in 2020. We had a short term to advertise. It was the new time doing something, etc. 2021. bigger turnout. People started to get more used to it. I'd say the higher cost for 2021 on Cortez was in 2021. We were chipping off, everything was coming back to Campbell River. So once we found that localized solution of disposal sites that were within that 100 meters from a structure on Cortez and Quadra, that contributed to the dramatic decrease in 2022 for Cortez. And I think I would speculate for 2022 for Quadra, more people knew about it. There was a very bad windstorm and winter that year, so there was a lot more debris piling around. And so the cost just highly escalated on Quadra that year, which is also something to take into consideration when putting together the cost of what this would going forward. Now people have gone about 2 years without this, the debris is piling up, and yeah. I'm sure there are other reasons, but that's my speculation.
Director Vinesh, you got something further?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Just looking at the draft bylaw right now for the Climate Resiliency Service, I seem to remember us making a motion to, on the description of service, changing it to reduce the area's greenhouse gas emissions rather than carbon emissions. I'm not seeing that reflected in this version. I'm wondering.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, what you're looking at is an historical copy.
Okay.
Those changes have been made to the bylaw, but they weren't relevant to today's discussion. So it wasn't reproduced on the agenda today.
Thank you. Just wanted to clarify that.
All right, we're still on receipt. I'll call the question. All those in favor? That is carried. Number 6, evacuation routes in Electoral Area D.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Mr. Koopman as well.
Yeah, so this report outlines the regional district's role in the evacuation process while understanding and respecting that authority and jurisdiction over public roads and electoral areas is the direct responsibility of the Ministry of Transportation. So if there's any questions on this report, happy to take them.
Mr. Rice?
Thank you, Chair. The reason that I brought this motion forward is that there is now a heightened awareness in Area D because of the fact that, we use the island highway so much. Should something happen to that, how do people move around? And, I can appreciate the fact that plans need to be flexible and all that, but people are still wanting to know where are the evacuation routes? And right now, when I looked at the maps, we only show it up to York Road. So what about everything from York Road going north?
I will have to check our website on that. I believe the map covers all of Area D from Jubilee to the Oyster River. We have one specific for the floodplain, and then we have one for all of Area D.
I checked the directory that was in the link there, and there was 3 maps that related to the floodplain, and then there was one which was called the Oyster River Community. So that's basically from the Oyster River to York Road. But that was it. And even though I tried to zoom out, that was all we could see. And this is really, again, coming about because, again, people on Finch, for example, how does first responders get to there? So what are the routes? And this has been quite a conversation going on in the community. And, I'm happy to do whatever I can. So I guess maybe my next question is, what can we do to actually bring these a little bit more up to date?
Well, first, we do have all those maps, so I'll check on the website, and if they're not there, make sure that we get them uploaded so that the community has access to them. Yep.
Anything further on receipt? All those in favor? That is carried. And we are on number 7, Electoral Area C, Official Community Plan Development Process for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion,
Anna
staff?
Cole will speak to this, yes.
Thank you, through the chair, to the committee. This report is just a update with respect to our official community plan processing for Electoral Area C. We're pleased to let everyone know that we did launch officially the OCP process in October of this year. Middle of October, we had a meeting on Reed Island, which was very well attended by a number of residents from the outer islands, around 45-ish, I believe. Following that, that. We did a high-level summary of that event and went out to Quadra Island at the end of November. Again, a well-attended event to basically launch the planning process and start the process with high-level visioning and an overview of what the OCP can look like and may look like throughout this process. We've broken it down to about 4 different phases in our consultation processing. We have more or less completed phase 1. We're just finishing some of the First Nations consultation work that is initiated in phase 1, but we're definitely moving into phase 2. We have a ton of work yet to do here. This is in the very, very preliminary initial stages of consultation. We have a number of communities that we still need to visit and engage through a number of methods using both in-person, virtual, and some key specific engagement opportunities looking to seek interest from those community members that are not always as easily consulted as what we would like. Looking to do some initial conversations with younger families in the electoral area C area, as well as youth and school children. So we are just in the phases of trying to formalize what that might look like. We're looking at probably the rest of 2025, finalizing our consultation and developing our visions and key policies and objectives prior to providing a draft back to the community, which would likely be late 2025, 2026. Thank you.
Directors? Director Mooney?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I'm looking forward to learning a little bit more from you about the OCP process. I noticed that the report states that the first 2 of what will be a series of engagement opportunities throughout the region has occurred, and consultation with other segments of electoral area C is planned to take place throughout 2025. And I do understand the reluctance to specify a fixed process, as the idea is to listen and learn and adjust accordingly. However, I'm curious about the preliminary consultation plan because I'm hearing from the community that they want to know what it looks like. They want to know how many more opportunities there are going to be to engage, if it's going to be on specific topics, or if it's going to be, each meeting is going to be having a broad focus. Like, I think there's a lot of interest from the community, so I recognize that there is according to the report and the website, the preliminary consultation plan has been completed, and I'm wondering if it's possible to sort of share out some of that information to the community and to the directors. I'm also looking to hear that there's remote communities like Refuge Cove and Greenpoint Rapids are going to be consulted. And then looking at the consultation on Quadra, I'm curious how you see these future opportunities unfolding. I'm asking because there seems like there's a variety of topics that an OCP covers, and I'm wondering if there's been consideration for a series of meetings where maybe these topics would be considered per meeting, so that the folks who have a particular interest or in one area would all know that this was an important meeting to attend. And, I just feel like there's some people that are really passionate about certain parts of the OCP, and it'd be really helpful if they had an opportunity to have those conversations with staff. And then, so I'm looking for some feedback on that, but I also wanted to share what I've been hearing so far from a number of people in the community. And there's 3 things. A number of folks believe that the current OCP has a lot of great things, and there's concern that it's being tossed out and everything is completely starting fresh. And I've heard from multiple people that they would really like an opportunity to review the current OCP and highlight areas that would be beneficial to bring forward into the revised OCP. And number two, as I mentioned, folks really want to know what to expect. Announcing one meeting and nothing further, not even a hint of a follow-up meeting or a schedule, is frustrating for people who have busy lives and calendars to juggle. So I'd like to see, if possible, a more proactive approach to planning these sessions so folks can save the dates if they want to attend. And that there is also time to use the various channels to reach out to various sectors of the community. And the third thing that I would like to mention that I've been hearing a lot about, because it's definitely not the least topic, is that the Outer Discovery Islands residents are having a significant amount of concern with the understanding that their community is very engaged in an OCP, have been for years, and have been having independent meetings because they're very engaged and active and focused on ensuring that the OCP that is developed for their communities is going to meet their vision. So they've recently understood from something that was stated at the Quadra Island OCP and relayed to them that there wasn't a plan for a distinct official community plan for the Outer Islands, or a schedule, or however you want to say that. So they're really clear that they want to work on an OCP for the Outer Discovery Islands as an independent OCP. They have a very different lifestyle and vision, and they want that to be clearly articulated through a document which speaks to their unique identity. So to me, I'd say that it's a community-led process is something that you've been really clear on. So I'm hoping that you can confirm here at the table today that this is being addressed, or that their concerns are going to be meaningfully spoken to and assured, and that there will be a distinct document for the Outer Islands.
Thank you, through the chair. There's a lot there from the director. Just would like to speak to the reference to reluctance. There's certainly no reluctance on the part of staff, so I would like to make that very, very clear right here from the get-go. The communities have been communicated with as best they can be with staff through our consultation that's happened to date and through our website. We have informed the public from the very get-go. You can look at the project page and the dates that project page were launched, that the official community plan is an electoral area C official community plan. We have had multiple conversations with key members of the public and the area director to that effect. Nowhere at no time did anyone say that it was not a full electoral area C OCP. What's also very, very clear is that in all the consultation and communications that have happened with staff is that the Outer Islands have been doing significant work on the OCP. We have applauded the work that the Outer Islands have done, and we have respected that work, and we've indicated to the Outer Islands that they will have a specific portion of the Electoral Area C OCP that would specifically relate to their vision, objectives, and policies. So I would like to make that clear, and I don't know how many more times we can make that clear. With respect to the consultation plan as outlined is what it is to date. We have said from the get-go, it is an iterative process. It is evolved as each and every time we go out to the communities. We have initially launched this process and informed the public that this is the initial launch. We are in the very preliminary stages. As we work through the initial outreach, we will be further informed by the community, and that information will then lead to a more conclusive consultation plan. We have over a year of consultation to still happen, and it would be very, very, it would be insulting to lay out a consultation plan at this time. We are also working with key agencies and First Nations behind the scenes. Those conversations will also inform the process. So I really encourage everyone, as we have done since October 16th, to be part of the process, to continue to send information and comments through the planning email address, to sign up to the project page so you receive notifications. We have done our very, very best to ensure that every single meeting we've had has had as much advertising as possible. I did see a reference that we only notified for the Area C OCP meeting 2 days before. I would just like to state that this was advertised in 3 Bird's Eyes and 1 Discovery Island, as well as on our website, as well as on the pages that are through social media. And so we are trying to do our best to inform. We're going to do better with postering, so actual posters throughout Quadja and the outer islands and on the ferries to ensure that people are informed, and as indicated in the staff report, using multiple opportunities for consultation. Obviously, we are not going to be able to water taxi to every area of outer area C. That's just impossible. But we are definitely going to do our best to consult. We're also going to try to inform the process with respect to who would like to be involved in this process. We have yet to hear from all of the communities. We are not going to group all of the outer islands to, be informed by those that are participating at Reed. I mean, that's just not going to happen. So again, we are in the very preliminary stages, and we will continue to update the community as we move through the process. And we do thank them for their participation and their passion.
Anything further?
Well, I would just add that, with respect, the meeting that was on Reed Island was attended by residents from several other islands. It was not billed as an OCP meeting for solely Reed Island, and it was definitely not attended by only Reed Islanders. So I think that just needs to be clearly stated that that was an Outer Islands OCP meeting, and it was attended by many folks from.
Thank you. And as you'll see on the project page, that meeting was advertised as an Outer Area C OCP meeting, and the subsequent one was advertised as a Quadra Island. Certainly anyone from anywhere can participate in any of those meetings, but we are aware and ensure that we recognize who is participating and where they're participating from.
And if I may, Chair, I'm really happy to hear you say that there will be a specific section that is designed for the folks on the outer islands, and that was something that I understood as well from our previous conversations, was that whether it was, I think the description that I heard from staff was that it's something called a schedule. It's kind of like a chapter within an OCP, which speaks like we have currently with a village plan, which is very specific to a geographic area on Quadra Island, and it would be a similar schedule or chapter within the OCP for the outer Discovery Islands. Is that what you are confirming, that is how you anticipate this being, and rather than like footnotes on pages, that things are different on Reed Island or Morel?
Through the chair, again, I cannot confirm what it's going to look like because we don't know what it's going to look like. I don't know who is going to want to be specifically identified through this planning process. I don't know what communities are going to identify as wanting to participate in a specific schedule or be included as a specific local area. So I cannot confirm that. As I've indicated, we don't know. We haven't consulted. There is likely areas that don't want to be singled out or don't want to be included at all. It's very possible that the geographic area for this OCP will look very much different than what it looks like right now under the Rural Land Use Bylaw and the existing official community plan. When you look at our project page, we've listed out what bylaws are affected currently or currently govern these areas. And we've listed both the Rural Land Use Bylaw, which covers outer islands, mainland inlets, and the official community plan for Quadja, which is specific to Quadja. We don't know that that's what this is going to look like as we move through this process. And I'm not going to make that assumption at this time. So no, I will not be able to clarify that. But certainly, the development of the official community plan will allow for specific schedules to be included as local area plans.
Okay, great. That's confirmation that the community is being listened to, and I appreciate that. So can we just circle back to my question about the concerns or questions from constituents about the current official community plan and taking a look at it to see what the pieces of it are that are going to maybe be relevant to continue forward. For instance, there is a local area plan in our current OCP, which is for the village. So like, does that mean if we are building a whole new OCP, does that village plan stay, or are we reviewing that at the same time?
Thank you, through the chair. Much of this will come to light as we move through the process. These questions are going to continue to be answered as we consult the public during each of our meetings, during each of our updates. We are not looking to revisit the Kwathiasi Cove Village Plan at this time. We are looking at the generic official community plan as its generic area covering the entire electoral area C, or whatever portions of electoral area C are looking to be covered. We are not opening up the village plan at this time. The public has been communicated through these meetings and through the page that we're not going to bring the existing official community plan document as a starting point and redline that. That's not how these processes evolve. We're starting from scratch. We're allowing the community as it is today to start dictating where those areas of concern lie, where the focus points are, and where the gaps are. As indicated in the Area C meeting and Reed Island, once that happens, we're going to start to see common themes. Also, as communicated in the plan, in those planning sessions, there are certain areas that we need to include in the official community plan, and then there's certain areas that will be informed through the public process that may be included in the plan that don't necessarily need to be included in the plan. But we're not going to start with a historic document and start dictating to your communities where they need to go. We are starting from scratch. We're allowing the community to lead the process. And obviously, once we start moving through this, we're going to see where those differences lie between where the community is going now and the plan that they currently have in place. And also, obviously, there's going to be themes when it comes to climate change, transportation, housing. Those will be broken out into sessions like they always are in every planning process that we have done to date in the regional district. So yes, but people need to wait until we get there and let them guide this process. The process is going to be more and more involved as we move through it. But again, I cannot tell you today that in March 2025, I'm going to have an OCP session on transportation or housing or climate change, because this is going to be dictated by the community as we move through the process.
My last question, Chair, would be, do you anticipate monthly meetings for the next year, or bi-monthly meetings, or until June, or what is your perspective on that?
I can't outline the specific schedule to the consultation process at this time. There are many factors that will lead into how we consult. And again, they're not just going to be sessions that are held, on a monthly, weekly, bi-weekly, whatever basis. There's many different forms that this consultation is going to take. So I cannot say. What I can say is 2025 is going to be full of consultation. You also have to remember that your electoral area is also going through a number of other processes. So there's going to be sessions that are dictated, that are required for your active transportation network plan, which has an end date that has to be achieved. So all of those things are going to factor into how much consultation we can have with your electoral area, depending on which project we're talking about.
Thank you.
So I've just one question. Does this end up as a public hearing in the end for approval of the OCP?
Through the chair, yes, thank you.
Okay, so the only comment I personally have is, I know these things cost an awful lot of money, and let's absolutely ensure that when it comes to the public hearing, it's not going to be defeated. Let's do whatever we can to make sure this thing is successful.
Well, it wouldn't be our plan for it to fail, that's for sure.
No, I know, but sounds like there's a lot of controversy. All right, let's move along. On receipt then, all those in favor? That's carried. Item number 8, Grant and Aid Ocean School, Grove School.
Move receipt.
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of receipt? That's carried. Director Rice?
Like to move item B, that the committee recommend that a grant in aid for the Ocean Grove School Parent Advisory Council in the amount of $2,000 be approved to assist with costs associated with facilitating the X Block and Sparks program to be paid from Electoral Area D grant in aid budget.
Second.
Any discussion, anyone? All in favor? That is carried. Correspondence? Electoral Area Directors Forum for receipt.
Move receipt.
Second.
Any discussion on this one? Seeing none?
Yeah, just one note. It's I don't think I'm going to attend this because it's just a one-day thing, and it was great last year how it was attached to the leadership conference as well, and yeah, it's just I think unfortunate timing on this one, and I'm not going to be attending because of that, but hopefully it aligns in future years.
Okay,
I agree.
all righty. On receipt then, all those in favor? It's carried. Directors' reports, none, new business for termination. Motion, please.
Move termination.
Second.
Thank you, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you, everybody.
Just a quick comment for the board meeting. So Director Jack's going to be chairing the meeting. So as you know, there's often a lot of reading. I've asked him to defer the bylaw readings to the area directors so he doesn't have to read them all out.
Good.
So if you see yours coming, can you kind of anticipate that you'll speak to the, so he doesn't have to read them all? Thanks.
That's always a good idea,
Yeah.